city that could use an upgrade in their cleaning services, and I knew just the company to provide it. It's funny how $80 can change your life, not in the way you might think, not by winning a lottery or making a lucky investment. No, $80 was the price of my freedom, though I didn't know it at the time. I was 23, fresh out of college, working my first real job at a small tech startup. The pay wasn't great, but I loved the work. I was learning, growing, dreaming of building something of my own one day. My parents, though, they had different ideas about success. "Olivia, we need to talk," my mother's voice crackled through the phone one evening. I was still at the office, debugging code that would later become the foundation of my company. "Your father and I are a bit short this month. We need $80 for the cable bill." It wasn't the first time they called asking for money. Ever since I'd started working, they treated my bank account like their personal emergency fund. 20 here, 50 there, small amounts that added up to thousands over time. "Mom, I can't," I said, my voice firm but gentle. "I've already helped with the electricity bill last week, and the car payment before that. I need to save for my own future." The silence on the other end was deafening. Then came my father's voice. He must have been listening on speaker. "Your own future?" he scoffed. "What future? Working at that worthless startup. We put you through college, and this is how you repay us." I closed my eyes, remembering the student loans I was still paying off. Loans that were in my name, not theirs. "Dad, I paid for college myself. I'm still paying for it." "After everything we've done for you," my mother chimed in, her voice rising. "We gave you a home, raised you, and now you won't even help with $80. What kind of daughter are you?" I felt something snap inside me. Years of guilt, manipulation, and financial drain crystallized into a moment of clarity. "I am a daughter who needs to stand on her own feet," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. "And you are parents who should do the same." "How dare you?" my father exploded. "If you don't send that money right now, you're dead to us." "Dead, you hear me?" I gripped my phone tighter, tears threatening to spill. "I hear you, Dad. I hear you clearly for the first time." "Then make your choice," my mother added, her voice cold. "Your family or your precious money." I took a deep breath, thinking about the code on my screen, the dreams in my heart, and the future I wanted to build. "I choose my future," I said quietly. "Then you're no longer our daughter," my father spat. "Don't ever contact us again." The line went dead. That night, I stayed late at the office, pouring my pain into my work. The code I wrote through my tears would later become the core algorithm of my company's first product. But I didn't know that then. All I knew was that I'd lost my family over $80. The next few months were a blur of work and loneliness. My parents kept their word. They blocked my number, returned my letters unopened, and told the entire extended family that I was dead to them. My cousins, aunts, and uncles who had always praised my academic achievements and career choices suddenly treated me like a pariah. But something unexpected happened. Without the constant drain on my resources and emotional energy, I started to thrive. The small savings I managed to build up became my seed money. The extra hours I used to spend dealing with my parents' financial emergencies went into developing my own software. My startup noticed. 6 months after that fateful phone call, my boss called me into his office. "Olivia, that algorithm you developed, it's revolutionary. We want to make it the centerpiece of our new product line, and we want you to lead the project." I threw myself into the work. Every rejected family dinner invitation became an extra hour of coding. Every holiday spent alone turned into a new feature development. The pain of being disowned fueled my determination to succeed. A year later, I had a choice to make. The company wanted to buy my algorithm outright for a substantial sum. It was more money than I'd ever seen, enough to pay off my student loans and still have plenty left over. But something told me to hold on to it. This wasn't just code anymore. It was my ticket to independence. Instead of selling, I made a bold proposal. I would start my own company with my algorithm as the foundation and partner with them instead. To my surprise, they agreed. More than that, they invested. Olive Tech was born in a small office with 3 employees. Me, a junior developer I'd mentored, and a sales rep who believed in my vision. We worked impossible hours, lived on coffee and determination, and poured everything we had into making it work. The first year was brutal. I lost count of how many times I nearly gave up. How many nights I cried myself to sleep wondering if my parents were right about me. But each morning, I got up and tried again. Then came our first major client, then another, and another. By the end of year 2, we had 20 employees. By year 3, we had to move to a bigger office. Our software was doing things nobody else in the industry had thought possible, solving problems others hadn't even recognized yet. I kept tabs on my family through LinkedIn and occasional updates from the few relatives who still spoke to me. I learned that my father had been promoted to middle management at his company. My mother still worked part-time at the local library. They still lived in the same house, still complained about money, still told everyone who would listen about their ungrateful daughter who abandoned them. Little did they know that the small startup they dismissed was about to become one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the country. Little did they know that their worthless daughter was on the verge of something extraordinary. But they would find out soon enough. Because after 5 years of silence, after building my company from nothing to the edge of a major breakthrough, I was about to appear on national television. And I knew they would be watching. The morning of my television appearance, I stood in front of my full-length mirror, adjusting my blazer. The woman staring back at me was a far cry from the broken 23-year-old who had lost her family over $80. My clothes were tailored now, my posture confident, my eyes clear and focused. "Miss Carter, the car is here," my assistant, Michael, called from the living room of my penthouse apartment. The drive to the studio was surreal. CNBC had reached out after OliveTech's latest innovation hit the market, an AI-driven software solution that was revolutionizing supply chain management. Our company valuation had just hit $80 million, a number that felt like poetic justice. "Just remember," Michael said, reviewing our prep notes, "they'll want to focus on the technology, but they'll probably ask about your background too. Are you sure you want to tell the whole story?" I nodded. It's time. The studio lights were bright, the makeup artist's final touches perfect. As I sat across from the interviewer, Sarah Chin, I thought about my parents' small TV in their living room. They never missed the morning business news. Today we're joined by Olivia Carter, founder and CEO of OliveTech, the company that's been making waves in the tech industry. Sarah began. "Olivia, your company just hit an $80 million valuation. That's impressive for any startup, but especially one that began just 5 years ago. Tell us how it all started." I took a deep breath. "Actually, Sarah, it started with $80. Not in the way you might think, not as an investment or a loan. It started when I lost my family over $80. The interview went quiet. This wasn't in the prep notes. "Would you elaborate on that?" Sarah leaned forward, intrigued. So I told the story. All of it. The constant financial drain, the manipulation, the final phone call, the dissoundment. I spoke about building something from nothing, about turning pain into motivation. When they cut me off, they thought they were punishing me, I said, looking directly into the camera. Instead, they set me free. That $80 they demanded, it would have been gone in a moment. Instead, it became the seed of an $80 million company. My phone started buzzing before I even left the studio. First came the text from my cousin Sophia, the only family member who had stayed in touch. "OMG, Aunt Linda and Uncle Dave, my parents, are losing it. They're calling everyone in the family." Then came the calls, dozens of them from blocked numbers. I knew who they were from. I handed my phone to Michael. "Screen these for me, please." Back at the office, my team greeted me with applause. They all knew my story now, understood why I pushed so hard, worked so long. But I barely had time to acknowledge their support before Michael rushed in, his face pale. "Your parents are in the lobby." I stood by my office window, looking out at the city skyline I had helped reshape. "Send them up." They burst through my office door moments later. My mother, wearing the same pearl necklace she'd had for 20 years. My father, his face red with a mixture of anger and something else. Was it embarrassment? "How dare you?" My mother started. "How dare you air our private business on national television?" I turned slowly. "Private business? You mean the story you've been telling everyone for 5 years? About your ungrateful daughter who abandoned her family?" "We came to give you a chance to apologize," my father cut in. "To make things right." I laughed softly. "Make things right? You mean now that I'm worth something to you?" "We're your parents," my mother cried. "We gave you everything." "No," I said firmly. You gave me an ultimatum over $80. And now you're here, not because you miss me, not because you're sorry, but because I'm successful. My father's face softened slightly. Princess, let's put this behind us. We're family. We should be celebrating your success together. My success? I walked to my desk and pulled out an old envelope. You mean the success you said I'd never have? The dreams you called worthless? I slid the envelope across the desk. Here's your $80, with 5 years interest. They stared at the check, their faces a mix of shock and shame. But we don't want your money, my mother whispered. We want our daughter back. The daughter you had doesn't exist anymore, I replied. You killed her the night you chose $80 over her. The woman standing before you, she built herself from the ashes of your rejection. Please, my father's voice cracked. We made a mistake. Yes, you did. I agreed. And it was the best thing you ever did for me, because it taught me exactly what I'm worth. And it's a lot more than $80. I pressed the intercom. Michael, please escort my guests out. Olivia, wait. My mother called as security approached. What about family? I met her eyes one last time. Family doesn't disown you over $80. Family doesn't come back only when you're worth millions. What you taught me that night wasn't about money. It was about value. My own value. And that's something I'll never let anyone discount again. After they left, I sat in my office as the sun set over the city. My phone kept buzzing with messages from relatives who had shunned me, now eager to reconnect. I turned it off. On my desk sat a framed dollar bill, the first revenue a live tech ever earned. Beside it, I placed the uncashed check I had written to my parents. 2 pieces of paper, 2 very different kinds of value. That night, as I walked through my empty penthouse, I didn't feel lonely. I felt free. The $80 that costing my family had given me something far more valuable. It had given me myself. My company continued to grow, eventually expanding globally. The valuation kept climbing far beyond that initial $80 million. But I never forgot the lesson of that first $80, that sometimes the biggest gains come from what you refuse to give away. My parents never cashed the check. Last I heard, they had moved to a smaller house, still struggling with bills. Sometimes I wonder if they ever understood that the real cost of that $80 wasn't financial, it was the relationship they threw away. But I don't dwell on it. Instead, I focus on building something meaningful. Every quarter, Alive Tech donates thousands to organizations helping young entrepreneurs escape financial abuse. Every year, we fund scholarships for students who've been cut off by their families. Because sometimes, the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about helping others rise above. And sometimes, the smallest amount of money can lead to the biggest change in your life. All it takes is the courage to say no and the strength to face the consequences. In my case, it took $80 to learn I was worth millions, not in dollars, but in self-worth. And that's something no one can take away from me. Family only, my mother-in-law Margaret said sweetly, closing the office door in my face. I'm sure you understand, dear. I stood there in the hallway of Sullivan Industries headquarters, my hands clenched at my sides. Through the frosted glass, I could see the shapes of my husband's family gathering around the conference table for their monthly business meeting, a meeting I wasn't allowed to attend. Despite being married to the CEO's son for 3 years, despite having an MBA from Wharton, despite having doubled the efficiency of their shipping department during my brief stint as a temporary consultant. But of course, none of that mattered, because I wasn't born a Sullivan. Don't take it personally, Kate, my husband Thomas said later that night, loosening his tie as he got ready for bed. It's just tradition. The business stays in the family. I am family, I replied quietly. We're married. He gave me that patronizing smile I'd grown to hate. You know what I mean. Blood family. Besides, you've got your little consulting projects to keep you busy. Little consulting projects. As if the work I did helping struggling companies turn themselves around was somehow less significant than his family's mid-sized shipping company. The quarterly numbers looked rough, I commented, watching his reaction in the mirror, especially the Asia-Pacific division. His smile faltered slightly. Been peeking at confidential documents again. No, I read the public financial statements, like any interested investor would. I turned to face him. You're losing market share to smaller, more agile competitors. Your infrastructure is outdated and your management structure is. Enough? He cut me off sharply. You don't know everything, Kate. The Sullivans have been running this business for 3 generations. We know what we're doing. I let it drop, but I knew better. Sullivan Industries was hemorrhaging money, locked into outdated practices by a family too proud to admit they needed help. A family that saw me as nothing more than their precious hair's decorative wife. The next morning, I made a decision. I'm starting my own company, I announced over breakfast. Thomas barely looked up from his phone. That's nice, honey. What kind of company? Logistics and supply chain management consulting. That got his attention. You can't be serious. That would be competing with Sullivan Industries. I took a sip of my coffee, enjoying his discomfort. Not directly. I'll be focusing on helping smaller companies optimize their operations. Besides, since I'm not family, what I do shouldn't concern the Sullivans, right? He frowned. Kate. I've already rented an office space, I continued, and I have my first client meeting this afternoon. Does Mother know about this? I smiled. Why would she need to? It's not a family matter. The office I'd rented was small but functional in a modern building across town from Sullivan Industries' aging headquarters. I'd spent weeks preparing for this moment, using my industry contacts and reputation to set up meetings with potential clients. My first client was Zhang Shipping, a rising star in the Asia-Pacific market, the same market where Sullivan Industries was struggling. Miss Harrison, Mr. Zhang greeted me warmly. Your reputation precedes you. Your work with Atlantic Freight was impressive. Thank you, I said, pulling up my presentation. But please call me Kate. By the end of the meeting, I had my first major contract. Within 6 months, Phoenix Logistics was handling consulting for 3 of the fastest-growing shipping companies in Asia. Our innovative approaches and cutting-edge technology solutions were making waves in the industry. Thomas, meanwhile, grew increasingly distant. He spent more time at Sullivan Industries, attending endless family meetings where they presumably discussed their declining market position. You could help them, you know, my best friend Sophia said over lunch one day. Save the family business. I shook my head. They don't want my help. They made that very clear. I paused, considering, but maybe they'll accept help from someone else. That evening, I registered a new company, Avalon Partners, a private equity firm specializing in acquiring and turning around struggling logistics companies. The ownership was carefully hidden behind layers of shell corporations. As Phoenix Logistics grew, I quietly built Avalon's war chest. Every successful consulting job, every innovative solution we developed, brought me closer to my goal. Then came the news I'd been waiting for. Sullivan Industries is looking for investors, my source at Goldman Sachs informed me. They're hemorrhaging cash. Word is they'll consider any serious offer. I smiled, thinking of all those closed doors, all those family-only meetings. Set up a meeting, but use Avalon's attorneys. I don't want the Sullivans to know who they're really dealing with. 2 weeks later, I sat in my office reviewing Avalon's offer to Sullivan Industries. The terms were generous but came with conditions: complete restructuring of management, modernization of systems, and new blood in key positions. My phone buzzed, a text from Thomas. Family emergency meeting tonight. Don't wait up. I could imagine the scene, the Sullivan family gathered around their conference table, Margaret at the head, all of them trying to figure out how their precious family empire had come to this. Time to head over, I told my assistant. She looked confused. To Sullivan Industries. I thought the Avalon meeting wasn't until tomorrow. I smiled, gathering my things. It's not, but I have a family meeting to crash. The security guard at Sullivan Industries recognized me, nodding as I walked in. The old building was quiet at this hour, most employees gone home. But light spilled from under the main conference room door, along with the sound of raised voices. I took a deep breath, straightened my jacket, and opened the door. The arguing stopped immediately. Every Sullivan face turned to stare at me. Thomas, his mother Margaret, his brothers Peter and James, their wives, who were apparently family enough to attend, and old Gerald Sullivan himself, patriarch of the clan. Kate. Thomas stood up. What are you doing here? This is a family meeting, yes, I know. I walked to the head of the table, opposite Margaret, and we have a lot to discuss. How dare you? Margaret sputtered. This is a private meeting about Avalon Partners' offer to buy controlling interest in Sullivan Industries. I placed my briefcase on the table. Yes, I know all about that. Thomas frowned. Have you been spying on us? No, I said calmly. I've been waiting for you to finally admit you need help. I pulled out a folder and slid it across the table, and now I'm here to offer it. Old Gerald picked up the folder, his hands shaking slightly as he opened it. What is this? That, I smiled, is proof that I own Avalon Partners. And tomorrow morning, I'm going to make an offer to buy Sullivan Industries. The silence that followed was deafening. This is ridiculous, Margaret said, but her voice trembled slightly. You can't possibly have the resources to buy Sullivan Industries. I pulled out another document. Phoenix Logistics made $40 million in profit last year. Avalon Partners manages a $2 billion investment fund. Would you like to see the proof? Peter, Thomas's older brother, snatched the paper from his mother's hands. These numbers can't be real. You're just a what, Peter? A woman? An outsider? Someone not good enough to sit in your precious family meetings? I leaned forward. While you were all busy protecting your traditions, I was building something bigger than Sullivan Industries could ever be. Why are you doing this? Thomas asked quietly. He looked lost, like he was seeing me for the first time. To hurt us? For revenge? I softened my tone slightly. No, Thomas. I'm doing this to save the company you all claim to love so much. I gestured at the financial reports spread across the table. You're 3 months away from bankruptcy. Your Asia-Pacific division is bleeding money. Your technology is a decade behind the competition, and your management structure is a mess. Old Gerald cleared his throat. And what exactly do you propose to do about it? All eyes turned to the Sullivan patriarch. In his prime, Gerald had built Sullivan Industries from a small regional player into a national force. But he'd spent the last decade watching his children slowly dismantle his legacy. I propose, I said, to do what I've been trying to do for 3 years. Modernize your operations, streamline your management, and make Sullivan Industries competitive again. By taking control from the family, Margaret's voice dripped with disdain. No, I corrected, by saving it from the family. I opened my laptop and pulled up a presentation. This is what Sullivan Industries could be. I've already implemented these systems at 3 of the fastest growing shipping companies in Asia. Your competitors are evolving. You need to evolve too. And if we refuse your offer, James, the youngest Sullivan brother, asked, then I'll watch you go bankrupt, buy the assets at auction for pennies on the dollar, and implement my plans anyway. I met each of their eyes in turn. The only difference is whether you want to be part of the solution or part of the problem. Margaret stood up abruptly. This is outrageous. Gerald, you can't seriously be considering. Sit down, Margaret. Old Gerald's voice carried the weight of decades of authority. She sat. He turned to me, his weathered face unreadable. You've built all this in just 3 years? Yes. While my children were busy excluding you from meetings and protecting their turf? Yes. A slow smile spread across his face. The first real smile I'd seen from him in years. Well done, Father, Margaret protested. He held up a hand, silencing her. I've watched you all slowly destroy everything I built because you were too proud to admit when you needed help. Too convinced that being born a Sullivan made you automatically qualified to run a modern shipping company. He looked at me with newfound respect. Meanwhile, the one person who could have helped us was sitting right here, being told she wasn't family enough. Thomas reached for my hand under the table. I pulled away. The offer expires tomorrow at noon, I said, standing up. If you accept, we'll begin restructuring immediately. If you refuse, I shrugged. Well, I hear bankruptcy court is unpleasant this time of year. I walked to the door, then turned back. Oh, and one more thing. If you accept, the first change will be ending the family-only policy for meetings. Merit, not birth, will determine who sits at this table. The next morning, I arrived at my office to find Thomas waiting outside. How long? He asked as I unlocked the door. How long what? How long have you been planning this? I considered the question as I made coffee. I wasn't, at first. I just wanted to build something of my own since your family made it clear I wasn't welcome in their business. I handed him a cup. But when I saw how successful Phoenix Logistics was becoming, while Sullivan Industries kept declining, well, let's just say opportunity knocked. You could have told me. Like you told me about all those family meetings, all those decisions that affected our future. I sat down at my desk. You made your choice, Thomas. You chose your family's traditions over your wife's abilities. Now I've made mine. He stared into his coffee cup. I'm sorry. I know, and I did know. Thomas wasn't a bad person, just someone who'd never learned to stand up to his family. But sorry isn't enough anymore. Things have to change. And if they don't accept your offer, then Phoenix Logistics will continue growing, Avalon Partners will find other investments, and Sullivan Industries will become another cautionary tale about family businesses that couldn't adapt. My phone buzzed. A message from Gerald Sullivan's private number. The board has voted. We accept your terms. When can you start? I showed Thomas the message. Looks like you got a new boss. What about us? He asked quietly. That depends, I replied. Are you ready to see me as more than just your wife? To treat me as an equal partner, not just in marriage but in business? He nodded slowly. I think I'm starting to. The restructuring of Sullivan Industries was exactly as challenging as I'd expected. Margaret resigned rather than work under my leadership. Peter and James initially resisted every change, but when the first quarter results showed a 15% increase in profits, they became more cooperative. Thomas surprised me. Once free from his family's shadow, he proved to be an innovative thinker and a strong ally in modernizing the company. Our marriage, strained for so long by his family's dynamics, began to heal as we worked together as true partners. 1 year later, I sat in a Sullivan Industries conference room, now modernized with state-of-the-art technology, leading the monthly strategy meeting. Around the table sat a mix of Sullivan family members and outside executives, all chosen for their skills rather than their last names. Quarterly results are in, I announced. Asia-Pacific division shows 40% growth. European expansion is ahead of schedule, and our technology platform has been rated top in the industry. Old Gerald, who'd stayed on as an advisor, beamed from his seat near the door. Well done, Kate. You've done what I always hoped my children would do, made Sullivan Industries better than it was before. No, I corrected him gently. We did it together, as a real family business should work. After the meeting, Thomas found me in my office. Mother called today. She's thinking of coming back, maybe doing some consulting work. I smiled. Tell her she's welcome to apply. Through HR, like everyone else. She won't like that. No, I agreed, but she'll respect it. And that's more important. Looking out my office window at the city skyline, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. From excluded outsider to company savior, from underestimated wife to respected CEO. You know what the best part is? I said to Thomas. What's that? Now when someone says family business, they're talking about something we built together, not just a name we inherited. He kissed my cheek. Speaking of family, have you thought more about what we discussed? I rested a hand on my still flat stomach, smiling. Yes, and this time, our child will never have to worry about being family enough for anyone. We need someone more dynamic, Michael Parker said, not quite meeting my eyes across his sleek desk. The tech industry moves fast, Catherine. Maybe it's time to consider a different field. I sat there, stunned, staring at the termination papers he just slid across to me. 23 years at Vertex Software, and this was how it ended. Dynamic? I repeated, my voice steady despite the anger building inside me. I just led the team that delivered our most successful product launch ever. Michael, 15 years my junior and CEO for barely 6 months, gave me that condescending smile I'd grown to hate. The industry is changing. We need young blood, fresh perspectives. Someone who can connect with our younger demographic. Young blood, fresh perspectives. Pretty words for what this really was. You mean you need someone younger, I said flatly. I'm 45, Michael, not dead. He shifted uncomfortably. Your severance package is generous. 3 months' salary plus. Save it. I stood up, gathering my dignity along with my papers. You'll regret this decision. He actually laughed, a short dismissive sound that made my blood boil. Catherine, let's be professional about this. You've had a great run. But it's time to step aside for the next generation. I walked out of his office without another word, past the curious stares of my colleagues, past the desk where I'd spent countless late nights building Vertex into what it was today. My daughter Olivia's latest text glowed on my phone. How'd the meeting go, Mom? Olivia, 23, brilliant and newly graduated with dual degrees in computer science and business. She'd been telling me for months that Vertex was changing, that the new management didn't value experience. I defended them, loyal to the end. I texted back, "We need to talk." 2 hours later, I sat in my kitchen watching Olivia pace back and forth like a caged tiger. Her dark hair, so like mine at her age, swung with each turn. "They can't do this," she fumed. "It's age discrimination. It's illegal. We should sue. And spend years in court." I shook my head. "No, I have a better idea." She stopped pacing. "What?" I smiled, feeling the first stirrings of a plan. "Remember that startup idea you pitched me last month? The one about adaptive learning software?" Neural dynamics. Olivia's eyes lit up. "Of course. I've been refining the concept, building out the architecture. How close are you to a working prototype?" She sat down across from me, excitement building in her voice. "I could have something basic in 3 months, but Mom, we need funding, infrastructure." "I have savings," I said. "And more importantly, I have 23 years of industry connections. People who owe me favors. People who might be very interested in supporting a company that actually values experience." Olivia stared at me for a long moment. "You're serious?" "Michael Parker thinks I'm too old for this industry." I pulled out my laptop. "Let's prove him wrong." The next 3 months were a blur of activity. While Olivia worked on the prototype, I reached out to my network. To my surprise and vindication, many were eager to help. It seemed I wasn't the only one troubled by the industry's obsession with youth. Marcus Chen, my old mentor from my early days at Vertex, now ran a venture capital firm. Adaptive learning software with an experienced team behind it. "Count me in." "But Catherine," he paused, "why not put yourself as CEO?" "Why Olivia?" I smiled. "Because nothing will prove my point better than having my two old ideas succeed under my daughter's leadership." We set up shop in a small office park across town from Vertex. Neural dynamics. Olivia insisted on keeping the name, started with 10 employees, all experienced developers who'd been aged out of their previous positions. 4 months in, we had our first working prototype. It was revolutionary, software that actually adapted to each user's learning style, growing and evolving with them. Perfect for both corporate training and educational institutions. While Olivia led the technical team, I handled business development. My industry contacts proved invaluable. Within 6 months, we had our first major client, a Fortune 500 company looking to overhaul their training systems. The success of that first implementation led to others. Neural dynamics grew rapidly, but smartly. We hired based on talent and experience, not age. Our office became a mix of youth and wisdom, each learning from the other. 1 year after being fired from Vertex, I sat in our new headquarters, a renovated warehouse with exposed brick walls and open workspaces, reviewing our latest acquisition proposal. "Mom." Olivia burst into my office, her face flushed with excitement. "You need to see this." She handed me her tablet. On the screen was a news article. "Vertex software reports fourth quarter losses, stock plummets." I skimmed the article. Vertex was struggling. Their last 3 product launches had failed to meet expectations. Customer satisfaction was down. And buried in the middle of the article was a telling quote from an anonymous employee. "The new management doesn't understand the complexity of enterprise software. They're all flash, no substance." Olivia perched on the edge of my desk. "They're looking for a lifeline. Rumor is they're approaching companies for potential buyouts or partnerships." I leaned back in my chair, a plan forming. "What would you say to acquiring their enterprise division?" Her eyes widened. "Can we afford it?" "After next week's IPO," I smiled. "Easily. But that's not the best part." "What is?" "Michael Parker would have to interview with you to keep his position." Olivia's grin turned wicked. "When do we start?" I picked up my phone and dialed Marcus. Time to make an offer they can't refuse. The wheels were set in motion. Our IPO the following week exceeded all expectations. Turns out investors appreciated a tech company that valued experience. Neural Dynamics was now worth billions, and we were about to turn the tables on Vertex. But first, we had to arrange a meeting. One that would remind Michael Parker that age was just a number, and karma was very, very real. The Vertex software lobby hadn't changed. Same modern art on the walls, same sleek furniture, same air of desperate trendiness. But this time, I wasn't here as an employee. I was here as the owner of their potential salvation. "Ms. Wilson." The receptionist smiled brightly. "The board is ready for you in the main conference room." I nodded, adjusting my designer blazer. The same room where I presented countless times during my 23 years here, but today was different. Actually, I said, I'll wait for my CEO to arrive. She's leading the presentation. The receptionist blinked, clearly not expecting that. I enjoyed her confusion as I sat down, checking my phone for Olivia's latest text. Stuck in traffic, 5 minutes away. Don't start without me. Right on cue, Michael Parker emerged from the elevator, his face tight with stress. He'd aged in the past year. Amazing what running a company into the ground could do to someone. Catherine? He stopped short, staring at me. What are you doing here? I smiled pleasantly, waiting for a meeting. You know, despite being so old, I can still manage that much. He flushed. Listen, about last year. Ms. Wilson. The receptionist cut in. Your CEO has arrived. Olivia strode through the front doors like she owned the place, which if things went according to plan she soon would. She wore a black power suit that made her look older than her 24 years. But her youth was still apparent. Michael's eyes widened as she approached. I could see him processing, wondering why someone so young was leading a company wealthy enough to acquire Vertex. Mom, Olivia smiled, kissing my cheek. Sorry I'm late. Traffic was terrible. She turned to Michael, her expression cooling. Mr. Parker, I presume. I watched the blood drain from his face as the pieces clicked into place. Mom, he choked out. Shall we head to the conference room? I suggested brightly. I believe the board is waiting. The boardroom was packed. 8 nervous-looking board members sat around the massive table, with Michael's seat conspicuously empty at the head. As we entered, I recognized most of them, the same people who'd rubber-stamped my termination a year ago. Olivia took control immediately, standing at the front of the room with the confidence of someone twice her age. Good morning, everyone. I'm Olivia Wilson, CEO of Neural Dynamics. I believe you all know my mother, Catherine. The board members shifted uncomfortably. One of them, Harold Matthews, who'd been my ally before Michael took over, actually had the grace to look ashamed. Let's cut to the chase, Olivia continued, pulling up our presentation. Vertex's market value has dropped 60% in the past year. Your last 3 products have failed. You're losing customers to more innovative competitors. She paused. Like us. Michael, who'd slunk into his chair at the head of the table, spoke up. We've had some temporary setbacks. Temporary? Olivia raised an eyebrow. Your best developers have left. Your enterprise customers are jumping ship. And your attempt to modernize by pushing out experienced employees has backfired spectacularly. She clicked to the next slide, showing Neural Dynamics growth charts. Meanwhile, our company, led by the people you discarded, has captured 30% of the enterprise market in just 1 year. The board members leaned forward, studying the numbers with increasing interest. Harold Matthews let out a low whistle. We're prepared to acquire Vertex's enterprise division, Olivia announced. Full purchase, generous terms. We'll retain most employees, though, she smiled coldly at Michael. There will need to be some changes in management. This is absurd, Michael sputtered. You can't seriously expect. Neural Dynamics is now valued at $4.2 billion. I cut in smoothly. More than 10 times Vertex's current market cap. I'd say we can expect quite a lot. Silence fell over the room. The deal is simple, Olivia continued. We'll absorb your enterprise division, retain your client base, and integrate your remaining viable products into our ecosystem. Current employees will be evaluated for positions within Neural Dynamics. She paused. Including you, Mr. Parker. Michael's face went from red to white. You expect me to interview for a position in my own company? No, Olivia corrected. You'll be interviewing for a position in my company. Assuming you're not, she glanced at me with a small smirk. Too old for the industry. I bit back a laugh as Michael slumped in his chair, defeated. Harold Matthews cleared his throat. I move that we take a brief recess to discuss the terms. Of course, Olivia nodded. Take all the time you need. Though I should mention, 3 of your largest competitors have already expressed interest in similar deals. We stepped out into the hallway, leaving the board to their deliberations. As soon as the door closed, Olivia turned to me with a grin. Did you see his face? I thought he was going to pass out. I hugged her tightly. You were brilliant, sweetheart, absolutely brilliant. Ms. Wilson. Michael's voice came from behind us. He stood there, looking smaller somehow, his previous arrogance replaced by desperation. "Catherine, could we speak privately?" I glanced at Olivia, who nodded and moved away. He swallowed hard. I may have been hasty last year, short-sighted. May have been. He ran a hand through his hair, more gray now than a year ago. I was wrong? Okay. Is that what you want to hear? I was wrong about you, wrong about experience, wrong about everything. I studied him for a moment. No, Michael, that's not what I want to hear. What I want is for you to understand something fundamental about this industry, about any industry. Success isn't about age. It's about wisdom, vision, and the courage to value people for their actual abilities. And now, he asked quietly, what happens to me? That depends on the board's decision. And after that, I smiled. It depends on how well you interview with my daughter. The board's decision took less than an hour. They accepted our offer unanimously, desperate to salvage what they could from Vertex's decline. Within weeks, the acquisition was complete. True to our word, we retained most of Vertex's employees. After thorough evaluations, some of the younger hotshots Michael had promoted left immediately, unwilling to work in an environment that didn't worship youth above all else. As for Michael, I sat in my office 3 months later, reviewing performance reports, when Olivia walked in. "You'll never guess who just accepted a junior project manager position," she said, dropping into the chair across from me. "How did he do in the interview?" She grinned. "Let's just say he's very eager to prove he can adapt to a more experienced management style." I laughed. "And his first assignment?" "He'll be working under Janet Thompson's team. You remember Janet?" I did indeed. Janet was another too-old employee Michael had pushed out. She joined Neural Dynamics early on and now led our largest development division. At 62, she was also our most innovative team leader. "Perfect," I said. Later that day, I walked through our office, observing our unique company culture in action. Young developers collaborated with industry veterans, each learning from the other. In one conference room, a 20-something programmer was explaining new coding frameworks to her older colleagues. In another, a gray-haired system architect was teaching junior developers about enterprise-level security protocols. I spotted Michael in the break room, looking somewhat shell-shocked as Janet outlined his first project. He glanced up and saw me watching. For a moment, our eyes met, and I saw the lesson had finally sunk in. Age was just a number. Success was about something far more important: the wisdom to recognize talent in all its forms. That evening, as Olivia and I shared a celebratory dinner, she raised her glass. "To proving them wrong." I shook my head, smiling. "To proving ourselves right." We'd done more than get revenge. We created something that proved success had no age limit, only the limits we placed on ourselves. And somewhere in a junior project manager's cubicle, a humbled Michael Parker was learning that lesson the hard way.
The day everything changed, I stood in my grandfather's study wearing the suit I'd had tailored specifically for this moment. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Sterling Industries headquarters, Manhattan's skyline stretched endlessly, a view I'd grown up admiring. The same view my grandfather had used to inspire me with stories of building his empire. "One day, Olivia," he'd say, "all of this will need someone strong enough to carry it forward." Now, 2 months after his passing, the entire Sterling family had gathered to hear the announcement of his successor. I adjusted my cufflinks, the ones he'd given me on my graduation from NIT, and tried to quiet the pounding in my chest. At 32, I'd spent the last decade preparing for this moment. While my cousin Maxwell attended society parties and collected headlines for his escapades, I had worked my way up through every department of Sterling Industries: research and development, operations, finance. I learned it all from the ground up, just as my grandfather had. The heavy mahogany doors opened, and my Uncle Edward, the interim CEO, strode in. Behind him came the board members, then my parents, my Aunt Catherine, and finally Maxwell himself, looking immaculate in his designer suit, despite having just returned from his 3rd vacation this month. "Thank you all for coming," Uncle Edward began, his voice carrying the weight of authority he'd wielded since my father gave up his position to pursue politics. "As you know, we're here to announce Sterling Industries' new chief executive officer, as specified in Father's will." I caught my mother's eye. She quickly looked away, and my stomach tightened. Something was wrong. Sterling Industries represents not just a company, but a legacy, Uncle Edward continued. "We need leadership that understands both tradition and innovation. Someone who can maintain our relationships with the right people, who knows how to navigate our circles." My father shifted uncomfortably. Aunt Catherine smiled. "Therefore, it is my pleasure to announce that the new CEO of Sterling Industries will be Maxwell Sterling." The room erupted in applause. I stood frozen, my mind refusing to process the words. Maxwell stepped forward, his practiced smile gleaming. "I'm honored to accept this responsibility," he said smoothly. "Sterling Industries has always been about family, about upholding traditions while embracing the future." Family. Traditions. The words rang hollow in my ears. I thought about the nights I'd spent reviewing contracts, the weekends lost to project proposals, the relationships sacrificed for this company, all while Maxwell had been building relationships at cocktail parties and charity galas. "Olivia." My mother touched my arm gently. "Don't make a scene." I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the guilt in her eyes. "You knew," I said quietly. "You all knew before this meeting. It's what's best for the company," she whispered. "Maxwell has the right connections. The board feels." "The board?" I cut her off. "Or Uncle Edward?" "Olivia." My father's stern voice joined in. "This isn't the time." I turned to face the room. Maxwell was still speaking, something about honoring my grandfather's vision. The same grandfather who had taught me everything about this business, who had believed in merit over birthright. Grandfather would be ashamed, I said, my voice carrying across the room. The chatter died. Maxwell's smile faltered. "Olivia," Uncle Edward warned. "Remember your place." "My place?" I laughed, the sound harsh even to my own ears. "I've given everything to this company. I know every department, every major client, every project in development. Maxwell doesn't even know how our main product line works." "That's enough." Uncle Edward's face reddened. "Your grandfather understood that running this company requires more than just technical knowledge. It requires the right personality, the right background, the right gender." I finished for him. The silence that followed was deafening. "You're being emotional," Aunt Catherine said dismissively. "Maxwell has been groomed for this position. He understands the social aspects, the networking required." "You mean he's good at spending money at charity events?" I removed my grandfather's cufflinks slowly, deliberately. "Well, don't worry. I won't embarrass you with any more displays of emotion." I placed the cufflinks on my grandfather's desk, next to the photo of him teaching me about circuit boards when I was 12. Maxwell had been at a boarding school in Switzerland then. "Olivia, don't be dramatic," my father started, but I was already walking to the door. "Miss Sterling," one of the board members called out, "your position as head of operations is still secure. The board values your technical contributions." I paused at the doorway, turning to face them one last time. "Keep it," I resigned. "Don't be foolish," Uncle Edward snapped. "Where will you go? What will you do?" I smiled, thinking of the project I'd been developing in secret, the patents I'd filed under my own name, the network I'd built while they thought I was just managing operations. "Watch me," I said simply, and walked out. Behind me, I heard Maxwell resume his speech, heard the polite applause resume. They probably thought I would cool down, come crawling back once I realized I couldn't survive without the Sterling name. They had no idea what I was capable of, but they would learn. In the elevator, I pulled out my phone and made a call I'd prepared months ago, hoping I wouldn't need it. "David, it's Olivia Sterling. Remember that offer to fund my startup? I'm in. But we do this my way." The elevator doors opened to the lobby, and I walked out of Sterling Industries for the last time. Behind me lay a decade of dedication and betrayal. Ahead lay uncertainty and possibility. I had no way of knowing then that in 10 years, I would own not just a competing company, but an empire that would bring Sterling Industries to its knees. That the family that had dismissed me would come begging for help. But that's getting ahead of the story. First, I had to build something of my own, and I knew exactly where to start. 10 years is a long time to plan revenge. But I wasn't just planning revenge. I was building something bigger than Sterling Industries could ever imagine. The first year was the hardest. I rented a small office in Brooklyn, far from Manhattan's gleaming towers. My team consisted of just 5 people, all brilliant engineers and developers who had been overlooked or undervalued at major corporations. Like me, they had something to prove. I sold my penthouse, liquidated my trust fund before my family could freeze it, and poured everything into Nova Technologies. The name was deliberate. In astronomy, a nova is a star that suddenly becomes explosively bright, outshining everything around it. "Are you sure about this?" David asked one night, looking over our dwindling finances. As my primary investor and closest friend outside the Sterling circle, he was the only one who knew my full plan. "Your family's already spreading rumors about your emotional breakdown in the industry." I was hunched over my desk, reviewing our latest prototype designs. Let them talk. They think I'm developing consumer electronics, trying to compete with their household appliance division. They have no idea what we're really working on. What Sterling Industries never understood was that while they were focused on maintaining their existing market share in home appliances and basic electronics, I had seen the future. Clean energy storage systems that could revolutionize power grids. Quantum computing applications that would transform data processing. For 3 years, we worked in near secrecy. I lived in a tiny apartment, poured every penny into research and development. My family's Christmas cards arrived each year, filled with updates about Maxwell's visionary leadership and Sterling Industries' continued market dominance. I filed them away without response. Then came our breakthrough. "It works." Anna, our head engineer, burst into my office one morning, her eyes wild with excitement. "The quantum storage system, it actually works." I followed her to the lab where our prototype hummed quietly, doing what Sterling Industries' research division had deemed impossible. We had created a quantum-based energy storage system that could revolutionize how cities managed their power grids. Within weeks, we filed the patents. A month later, major tech publications started noticing Nova Technologies. Investors began calling. But I was selective. I knew what money came with strings attached. The real turning point came when Morgan Stanley's head of technology investment contacted us. The meeting was set for their Manhattan office, 3 blocks from Sterling Industries. As my car approached the Morgan Stanley building, I saw a familiar figure entering Sterling Industries headquarters. Maxwell, surrounded by his usual entourage. He looked exactly the same, perfectly styled, perfectly confident, perfectly clueless about the storm that was coming. Nova Technologies isn't just offering a product. I told the Morgan Stanley executives an hour later. We're offering the future of urban power infrastructure, and we're the only ones who know how to build it. By the end of the meeting, we had secured $300 million in funding. But more importantly, we had gained powerful allies who saw Sterling Industries as outdated and ripe for disruption. The next few years passed in a blur of expansion, acquisitions, and strategic moves that my family never saw coming. Nova Technologies grew exponentially, but I kept my name out of the press, operating through subsidiaries and partners. Let Sterling Industries think I had disappeared. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for. Sterling Industries just lost the Chicago contract, David announced, striding into my office one morning. Their entire urban development division is in chaos. I smiled, remembering how I'd spent years building relationships with Chicago's city planners, knowing they would eventually need to upgrade their power grid. The contract was worth billions, and Sterling Industries had counted on it to fund their expansion plans. That's not all, David continued, a slight smirk playing on his lips. They're hemorrhaging money trying to develop competing technology. Maxwell's been making promises to shareholders that their R&D can't deliver. I leaned back in my chair, looking out at the Manhattan skyline from my new office, higher than Sterling Industries, with a better view. Had they figured out who owns Nova yet? No, the corporate structure is too complex. They know Nova is behind their troubles, but they haven't connected it to you. I picked up my phone, scrolling through recent messages. One from my mother, the first in years. Darling, I hope you're well. Perhaps it's time to come home? The family misses you. Translation: they were getting desperate. Another from Maxwell himself. Cousin, I know we've had our differences, but I'd value your technical expertise right now. Sterling Industries could use your skills. I deleted both without responding. What's our next move? David asked. I pulled up the latest market analysis on my screen. Sterling Industries stock had dropped 40% in 6 months. Their board was in panic mode. And I had just acquired a controlling interest in their largest remaining client through a shell company. Now, I said, we let them come to us. I didn't have to wait long. The next morning, my assistant interrupted my morning meeting. Ms. Noga, she said, using my professional name, Edward Sterling is in the lobby. He's demanding to meet with our CEO. I smiled, thinking of all the times Uncle Edward had dismissed my technical contributions. Make him wait an hour, then send him up. It was time for the Sterling family to learn exactly who they had underestimated. Uncle Edward looked older than I remembered. The confident swagger was gone, replaced by tense shoulders and worried eyes as he was finally shown into my office. He didn't recognize me at first. 10 years had changed more than just my position in life. Thank you for meeting with me, he began, his rehearsed speech dying on his lips as recognition slowly dawned. Olivia? Hello, Uncle Edward, I said calmly, enjoying the shock that spread across his face. Or should I say, Mr. Sterling? This is a business meeting, after all. He sank into the chair across from my desk, his face ashen. You're behind Nova Technologies? Surprised? I stood, walking to the window. From here, I could see Sterling Industries' headquarters, the building that should have been my legacy. I suppose you would be. After all, I'm just the technical one, right? The one who doesn't understand the social aspects of business. This is impossible, he muttered. We've been trying to figure out who owns Nova for years. The corporate structure, the subsidiaries. are all designed to protect my identity. I finished for him. I learned that from you, actually. All those lectures about keeping control through complex ownership structures. I paid attention, even if you never noticed. Edward's shock was transforming into anger. You've been deliberately targeting us. The Chicago contract, the patent blocks, the client poaching. It was all you. Not deliberately targeting, I corrected him. Simply competing. Isn't that what you taught Maxwell about business? Oh wait, no. You taught him about cocktail parties and board meetings. I had to learn about actual business on my own. We're family, he snapped. What you're doing, it's destroying everything your grandfather built. Family? I laughed, the sound sharp in the quiet office. Was it family when you passed me over for Maxwell? When you dismissed a decade of my work because I didn't fit your image of a CEO? I pressed a button on my desk, and the wall screen came to life, displaying Sterling Industries' financial data. Your stock has dropped 60% this year. Your major clients are fleeing. Maxwell's visionary leadership has led to failed projects and missed opportunities. And now you're here, probably to propose a merger or acquisition. Edward's silence confirmed my guess. Let me save you the pitch, I continued. Nova Technologies isn't interested in merging with Sterling Industries. We are, however, prepared to make an offer to buy controlling interest at a significantly reduced price given your current market position. I slid a document across the desk. Edward's hands shook as he read the terms. This would mean Sterling Industries would become a subsidiary of Nova Technologies. I finished. Maxwell would step down as CEO. The board would be restructured, and the Sterling family would retain only minority ownership. You can't do this, he whispered, but we both knew he was wrong. I already am, I replied. You have 24 hours to accept. After that, we'll proceed with our expansion plans without you. I believe your shareholders already know which way the wind is blowing. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a news alert. Sterling Industries stock hits 5-year low amid takeover rumors. Edward stood up, his face red. Your grandfather would be proud. I cut him off. He built his empire from nothing. So did I. The only difference is, I had to overcome my own family to do it. After he left, I sat in my office as evening fell over Manhattan. Within hours, the story would break. The mysterious owner of Nova Technologies revealed as the exiled Sterling Harris, the prodigal daughter who had outmaneuvered them all. My phone started buzzing with messages. Maxwell, we need to talk. Please. Mother. Darling, we had no idea. Can we meet? Aunt Catherine. You've made your point. Let's discuss this as family. I ignored them all. Instead, I called David. It's done, I said. Start the procedures for the takeover. How did Edward take it? About as well as you'd expect. I paused, looking at my grandfather's old cufflinks, which I'd kept all these years. Have security ready tomorrow. I expect more family visits. I was right. They came one by one over the next few days. My father, trying to appeal to family loyalty. My mother, tears and guilt. Maxwell, attempting to negotiate. But it was Aunt Catherine's visit that proved most interesting. You've grown ruthless, she said, studying me from across my desk. I learned from the best, I replied coolly. Yes, she smiled slightly. You did. That's why I voted for you 10 years ago. I blinked, surprised. You what? I was the only board member who voted for you as CEO, she revealed. I knew you had what it took. Edward and the others. They were afraid of change. Afraid of what you might do to their comfortable world. And look how right they were, I said. She laughed. Yes. Look how right they were. The takeover proceeded exactly as I had planned. Sterling Industries became a subsidiary of Nova Technologies. Maxwell resigned. The board was restructured, and I finally took my place in the office that should have been mine a decade ago. But I didn't stop there. Under my leadership, both companies flourished. Sterling Industries was modernized, its technology updated, its culture transformed. Nova Technologies continued to grow, expanding into new markets and technologies. The family? They adapted, eventually. They had no choice. Money and power were the only languages they truly understood, and now I spoke both fluently. On my first day in the Sterling Industries CEO office, I placed my grandfather's cufflinks on the desk where they belonged. The view was exactly as I remembered it, but now I saw it through different eyes. I wasn't just the technical one anymore. I wasn't just the overlooked daughter or the underestimated cousin. I was Olivia Sterling, CEO of Nova Technologies and Sterling Industries. The woman who had built an empire from scratch, who had beaten her family at their own game. And I was just getting started. David found me later that evening, still at my desk reviewing merger documents. Was it worth it? He asked. All those years of planning, working in secret? I looked out at the city lights, thinking of that day 10 years ago when I'd walked away from everything I thought I wanted. They thought they were pushing me down, I said finally. But they were actually pushing me forward. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying what others have built. It's building something better, he finished. I smiled, thinking of all the possibilities ahead. Exactly.